I am Vinnie Tortorich. Folks, your good intentions have been stolen, but don't worry. I'm here to help you get them back. You may be soft and succulent at the beginning of this process, but hang in there. Before long, you will be lean and mean, guaranteed.
Wow.
Yeah, this is where the love affair started with this movie and this man, one Mr. Peter Pardini. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
So, Peter, I always tell the story, and help me because I don't know if I tell the story correctly, but I was doing Adam Carolla's show one day, and you were coming on after me, and I didn't know your name from Adam. That's a bad term, but you came in, you went, "Hey, man, I'm a big fan." And I was like, "Okay." Who are you? And then I went, "Oh, he doesn't." Usually, it's like if it's Jeff Goldblum, it's Jeff Goldblum, right?
Yeah.
And it was David Crosby. Obviously, it's David Crosby. But when a guy comes in with the beard and the baseball cap and the tennis shoes, I go, "Oh, famous director." I don't know him because he's never in front of the camera. So this guy goes, "Hey, I'm Peter. I'm a big fan. I've lost weight and all this kind of stuff." And and we traded pleasantries, and maybe you gave me a card. Did you give me a card, or somehow I got your number? How did that?
I think I just got your phone number and called you or something.
No,
But yeah, I
I
mean,
called you because. All right, hang on, calm down. I think I
you
called
asked
you.
me.
Okay, you
You
go
called
then.
me. No, I mean, I became familiar with you because of that show. I mean, I bought Fitness Confidential. I mean, that's one of the only podcasts at that time that I was listening to that I would actually, buy something if somebody had recommended something. And so I had been, trying the diet, so to speak, for about a year, and then met you. And I could be wrong, but I think that we exchanged numbers maybe, and then you called me a couple weeks later or something like that, and then I came on your show, and the rest is history.
Yeah, and the way it was, I went home and listened to the podcast, and he's talking about the band Chicago, and I'm 62 now, right? So it was 2016 or 2017, so God only knows how I was 50 something. Chicago was kind of the soundtrack of my youth, of my teen years, like when you're dating and all of that, even before, like before dating, when I was like 11, 12, 13, they were called before Chicago, Transit Authority. And then, what is it, Satara comes in, and it's a whole different group at some point. And I don't think people realize how ubiquitous they were on the radio. You didn't turn on an FM radio station without hearing, at one point, it was something from the Rumors album, something from Boz Scaggs, something from Steely Dan, and something from Chicago. That was just a soundtrack of my youth. Now, I would also go on to the country and western stations where you wouldn't hear any of those people. So I was two-sided, right?
Yeah.
But when FM became a thing, especially out in the country where I lived, we learned about, like I said, Boz Scaggs, Steely Dan, Chicago. And by the way, all of those guys now are in a category called yacht rock.
Yeah.
Right.
Which they
They
resent.
create a whole category for me, and I remember the first time I turned on yacht rock. I said, Serena, I said, Alexa, play me some yacht rock. And Serena goes, "Oh no, what the hell is this?" And then we start toe tapping to every single song. And there's a lot of Chicago in there, right? So when I find out that this guy just did a documentary called Chicago Now More Than Ever, and that's the song we were playing before the show, I was like, all right, I got to see what's going on here. This is a documentary, and Peter, this is the biggest compliment anyone can get for a documentary. You can't. It's like you're trying to devour it. You want to know what happens next, even though you know this. Like I knew the story, the Peter's terror, all the problems, all the. But you're devouring this, and the songs are put in right at the right time, and everything is happening to where you watch it. You wait a month, and then you watch it again. That's how good it is, right?
Thank you.
I was so impressed after the first watching. I'm sitting at my desk one day and I'm cleaning up things, and I see Peter Pardini Chicago, or Peter Pardini Chicago movie. I got to call this guy and tell him how good the movie was, right?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I plunked the phone down and Peter picks up and he goes, "Who is this? I can't hear you." He was literally side stage of a Chicago concert when I called him.
So people are
Right.
going to think that the only thing I do in my life is Chicago every time I come on the show.
But dude, you took
How's
an
Lee doing today?
yeah. What's Lee up to? Did you tell him I said hello? Um, but look, the band was that iconic, and you took an iconic band and brought them to a whole new generation,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I mean, it the number one thing I think I get from people who aren't in your demographic are they've heard the songs, or they will say, "Oh, they're still together," or "Oh, they must only do 10 shows," or they don't say that, but it's a lot of surprise that they could still be going, and I get it. I mean, this is their 58th year, and 60 is going to be 2027, February 2027. So, when I joined up and started making, videos and then movies about them, um, I thought, okay, it's year 45, year 46, like maybe we'll get to 50. And then
Right.
after 50, I was like, there's no way we're getting to 60. Here it comes. Year and a half from now. It's crazy.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I'm pulling up more songs for later in the show here because yeah, it's one of my favorites. Yeah, it is nuts. And we were talking off air. I was just listening to the Adam Carolla show yesterday while I was at the gym. I have to say that part. I was at the gym. There's a fitness podcast, but I was. And Joe Mantegna was on, and he's older than me. He's in his 70s. I'm in my 60s. But a lot of his Italian family in Chicago reminded me, he's Sicilian also, reminded me of my Italian family on the bayou, all the way down to he's a student of the history of guns. I didn't know that about him, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's a
Show
show.
about it.
Yeah. And of course, he's connected to Chicago. And that's how I met him through you. I didn't meet him through any other Hollywood connections. You were doing a movie at the time
Oh,
that
that's
Serena
right.
was in. Yeah, and Joe
Forgot
Mantegna
about
was there, and super nice guy, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
And he's a big Peter Pardini fan, right? I mean,
He's one of these guys who is a consummate professional. Um, and I met him through the band. They were friends when they were younger, in their early 20s, and got a chance to direct him in a music video for Chicago back in 2011. And ultimately, I asked him to be in Rolling Thunder, which you and Serena were also in. And after that, he narrated the second documentary I did about the band, which showed their traversing of COVID and getting through the never having been off the road before. And the only thing that stopped him was like global pandemic that shut. They basically had no choice. That was they had to do
yeah.
it. Um, and so that was the last time I worked with him. But he's just a great person, and for him to say yes to me so many times and allow me to get better every single time we work together says a lot about him, because it's not normal for Hollywood people. You have to deal with their agents and
Right.
people telling you, "Oh, you haven't done this. You're not good enough," or "What have you done?" So I love Joe.
Well,
He's
you
amazing.
know, look, probably next to Mariska Hargitay, the guy's probably been in more TV shows than probably anyone else in history. When you think about it,
Maybe,
he's
yeah,
had long runs of just being in one show. Maybe the woman who plays Ally McBeal might have him,
maybe
or
Callista.
Callista Flockhart, or like I said, Mariska Hargitay, who, I was living at their house. I was in the guest house when she got on Law and Order SVU, and that was back in the 90s. right?
Yeah,
And that show, she's been on the show from the beginning, and it's still going on.
it's
Joe
unbelievable.
Mantegna has those kind of careers too. 17-year show here, 10-year show there. They're just all over the place, and he's in his 70s. He's not thinking about retirement. The guys in Chicago, all the same members, right? All the brass is all the same members. No
Yeah,
one
they've
just
got some different guys
retirement.
now, but yeah,
Yeah, but it is kind of nutty, right?
it's crazy. I mean, just the stamp. I mean, it's the same for actors too. Like, it's not. It's the joke he actually said in that episode you're talking about with Adam, where he was saying that his mom used to think he worked 1 hour a week,
Yeah,
and it's like I've talked to him sometimes where he's directing an episode of Criminal Minds, and it's like a 4 month process to direct one episode of a, I don't know if they're 24 episode seasons anymore, but he is the stamina to do that, because you're on, it's 16-hour days, and then
yeah,
Chicago, even though it's one show, they're standing and blowing into horns for 2.5 hours. um I get tired just standing there. I mean, it's like exhausting to emote to an audience for that long, I think. But they're on tour right now. I mean, as we speak, they're somewhere they're probably a little bit south of you. They were just in Mississippi a couple days ago. Yeah.
yeah. It's commendable. All of those guys that do it. I was backstage with Steve Miller at the Greek right before I left LA. Super nice guy, and his road manager is a big fan of me and the show and everything. And he's like, you got to come to the show. You got to meet Steve. You got to come hang out. And you look at it, and Steve goes on stage, man. He still does it, right? You look
Yeah.
at these guys. They don't have to do that. They're rich, right? They wrote their own music. They wrote their own songs. They got to have all the recording.
Yeah.
Most people go, yeah, I've had enough. And these people, Howie Mandel's that way.
Yeah.
Howie's
We're all
not.
doing it.
Yeah, I was with Howie on a private jet, and we were heading somewhere. Oh, we were heading to Mississippi. He told me, he goes, hey, he calls me and goes, hey, I'm going to be doing Mississippi. That's right near where your parents live, right? I said, yeah, this is the kind of guy he is. He goes, I'll get rich to get your family tickets. We won't tell them you're coming, and then you'll show up at the show with me. And it's like, oh, that's so great. That's so cool. So we're on the plane, and we're heading to Mississippi. He drops into Louisiana, does a casino there. We get back on the plane. I said, Howie, you, you have America's Got Talent. You got all the money from this show, that show, the other show. Howie's been on television since the 70s, right? The
Yeah.
first time I saw him on television was in St. Elsewhere, where he played a doctor from Tulane, right?
That's funny.
And this is how far back the guy goes. And I said, you're not obviously doing this for the money. Why? Why are you walking on stage? He goes, Vinny, I'm a comedian. It's what I do.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the guys in Chicago. That's the guys in, Steve Miller. That's all of them. That's Howie Mandel. It's what they do. And
Yeah, it's like I may have even said this before, but you know, in a much lighter inverse way, it's like the people who go into prison and are there their entire lives, and then they get out of prison and it's like, I got to go back. Like, this is the good version of that, where it's like they've been
yeah,
doing the same thing for, I mean, in Chicago's case, 58 years, and Joe Mantegna is right there, 50 something years.
yeah.
Um, you know, they couldn't do anything else and wouldn't do anything else. Because you could see, sometimes they get tired at the end of a tour, and then it's like, I'm so glad for the break. And then they're like chipper and ready to go 2 weeks later.
Yeah, that
So,
was that movie, where the guys are defusing bombs in Fallujah or wherever, and
yeah, Hurt Locker.
yeah, Hurt Locker, and then they come home and they're at Chuck E. Cheese with their kid, and
Yeah.
they don't know how life works because they were just doing the most intense thing in the world, right?
Mhm.
And now they're hanging out with parents, drinking cheap wine at Chuck E. Cheese, and they want to go back, right? They want to go to
Mhm.
another bomb. It's an interesting life for these people. Um, we're not here just to talk about that. You did my first documentary with me. And I'm
Yep.
looking at the poster right back there. We had a big premiere over in God, where was it? Near where you are recording right now, because I know you.
Scottsdale?
No, not Scottsdale.
Flagstaff.
Yeah, we're in Flagstaff, north of Scottsdale, and the poster is still in my office here. When you left my house that day, when you came in to do a podcast, and you said you should do a documentary, and I started basically almost yelling at you, going, "I'm not doing a documentary." There was this other guy that wanted me to do a documentary. He found money. And then they wanted me to do all this schlocky shit in the documentary to make it look like these vegan documentaries. I'm not doing that crap. And I'm not putting my own money. I don't even have enough money to do one. Everyone tells me not to do it. And you were like, you got to do a documentary.
Yeah,
And
don't doubt me, Vinny. Don't
yeah,
ever doubt me when I have an idea.
right. And then you said, and you goes, and you said, I'll do it. I'll help you. I will help you make a documentary. And I'm like, okay, but where's the money coming from? And then you said something that until today, I don't get how it works or how we did it. But you said you can crowdfund the money. And
Yeah.
we did it, right? We got $250,000 or so through crowdfunding.
Yeah. I mean, you give people a chance to, give what they want to give. So there's no pressure really. I mean, you say we have this project. Um, we've known each other for a long time, digitally, through your podcast and your book. And I thought at that time that there was a pretty good chance that it would be a cascade effect. If you had a lot of people giving $5 and $10 or the amount of weight that they had lost, you would inevitably have people who would give $5,000 and $10,000. And that's kind of what happened. I mean, we really only had the craziest thing is we raised $250,000, but it was only, I say only, but it was only a little over 3,000 donors, I think,
Yeah.
which is crazy. I mean, you wouldn't think that 3,000 would amount to that, but that's an average of what? $100 per person. And yeah,
Yeah. Like the hat I have on my head, you had to give like a lot of money to get this hat, right? This
yeah,
was part of it. I
still
can't
hasn't
remember.
fallen apart too. So it's a good hat.
This is the only one I have too, right?
Yeah.
People go, "Why don't you do that hat again?" It's like, nope, only the donors of that movie have this hat. And the one that got me was we said, okay, like 8 or 10 people can set up a meal with me, and you know, and I said, well, how does that work? And it's like, well, they have to fly to LA on their dime.
Yeah.
Uh, and then for what was it, like $2,500 or $3,000 or some crazy amount of money, and we
Yeah, it was something like it might have been 5. I don't know. There were a couple 5, I think for 5,000 it was executive producer credit or something.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but we handled it, I think, in a way that, I mean, that was one of the funny things is we finished it so quickly after we got the funds raised. It was like I remember there were only like 5 or 10 people who were constantly commenting about I didn't get my hat yet. I didn't get my hat yet, and it's like we just finished a movie in 6 months.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
We'll
was
we'll
that's
get
been my
you.
strength over the years is being able to, you know, talk to someone like you and say we should do this, and then getting the not the go ahead, but the having a partner saying yes, let's do it, and then knowing how to go from A to Z and not miss a step. I mean,
Yeah,
we were, yeah,
and that movie, and we only know this, and this is not bragging, but we only know this because the money comes in quarterly. How
mhm.
many years old is that movie now, Peter?
I think it was July 2019, so almost 6 years.
We still get a quarterly check from a documentary,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And as you know, I've taken that money to do other documentaries because I,
yeah.
I never feel like it's my money to go buy a Ferrari with, even though it's not Ferrari money. It's not my money to go play with.
No, I
People,
get it. I mean, you've used it to continue. I mean, it's almost like you are building a separate section of the business where it's like the funds come in and they go out to continue that business. So it's been really amazing to see what you've done.
Yeah, and it was all because and if it wasn't for you working on that first movie, and by the way, folks, even though he doesn't have a producer or director credit on anything else, whenever I get stuck, Peter is the man I call. He knows when I'm doing a movie because he's on speed dial, right? That's just the way it
Giving them the
works.
ingredients.
Yeah, I don't know how to make a movie, you know?
I'm the filmmaker version of Eat Happy with Anna Vocino. You just pick
Yeah,
up the book and it's like, here, cut fast here. No.
yeah. Do this, do that. And I'm like, okay. And I never question anything. It's just like, we're going to do this. And then,
Yeah, you've done a
yeah,
great job.
as a matter of fact, people have said to me, come on, Peter Pardini stink is all over these movies. And it's like, yeah, it could smell a little bit like Peter because I'm taking his advice 100%. I don't know how to do what he does. Right. That's why his stink is on these movies. And that's why they all do well. So thank you.
Well, yeah, no, I mean, no problem. I mean, I think that it's with everything that's been happening lately with just the conversation around food, you've been talking about beef tallow forever.
Yeah.
And how McDonald's got rid of it what in the early 80s or whenever it was. And now that's a topic that's in national news, and you've been talking about it ever since I've known you and long before I knew you. So you've got to be going through some kind of some kind of moment right now where all the shit you've been talking about is like
Right.
now out
I'm
there.
just I'm just glad that it's
There was
coming
one
out.
yesterday. Sorry, there was one yesterday that was like, "Oh, red meat keto diet might not be bad for your health." It's like, "Oh, really? I didn't know that."
Yeah, I've been yapping into a mic for a gazillion years. It, I don't know. I'm there. People don't even know why tallow was taken out of. It was all due to a campaign of one rich man in Middle America. I want to say from Kansas or somewhere. He was this really, really wealthy guy, and he had a heart attack. And he went on Dean Ornish's diet, and Dean Ornish was talking about, oh, you can't have any kind of oil or seeds or whatever, and the best kind of oil you can have is seed oils and not beef tallow. And at the time, McDonald's and everyone else was using beef tallow. That's why those fries tasted. Those fries used to be literally golden brown and just plump in the middle, and that's what beef tallow does to a potato, right? It makes it really delicious. And he went on just he spent millions and just did ad campaigns and everything else until McDonald's looked around and went, fuck it, we don't care. We'll cook
Yeah.
these things in seed oils if this guy will shut up, right? He's trying to sue him and everything else. And then after McDonald's dropped, everyone else dropped and just went, yeah, we'll do that too. It's cheaper, right? So it's good to see that. And by the way, that was one man with money that did that. It lets you know
Crazy.
what can be done with enough motivation and money, right? So
Yeah.
it's
Money
deadly
buys time and money buys influence. It's a fact of life.
yeah. Um, we're going to get into Peter's new movie here, and that's what we're going to talk about today. But first, I need to tell you guys purevitaminclub.com is the best vitamin company on the planet. Now, why do I say that? Do I have any kind of bias? Yes, I do. I do have a bias. I own the company. I created the first vitamin, the daily multicap. And the whole premise behind that one vitamin was to give people exactly what you need, real whole food vitamins, the real stuff. We don't mess with cyanocobalamin or anything. We have all the methylated versions of the vitamin. But not only that, there's no magnesium stearate, there's no titanium dioxide, all the crap that you'll find in other diets, other vitamins, it's all out, right? And the reason I did that was after I had cancer back in 2007, I was looking for the best vitamin on the planet. Turns out it didn't exist. I went to Whole Foods. I went to this company, that company. I went everywhere trying to find a clean vitamin. Even at the best companies that charge 2 and 3 and 4 times what we charge at Pure Vitamin Club, could not offer me that. That's why I created it myself and I offer it to you guys. It's not just a multivitamin. We have everything. We have vitamin C. It's a liposomal vitamin C. We have a sublingual B12 that's not mixed with sugar. Is hooked onto a calcium. We have a D3 plus MK4 and MK7. It gets absorbed. You don't pee it out. And we also have ultrasalt, which I always say is the Beyonce of the company, right? Beyonce was with a group called Destiny's Child. They did really great together. And then she broke out and became Beyonce. That's what the ultrasalt is. It should be in a company by itself. So go check out everything at purevitaminclub.com. We're talking to Peter Pardini. Peter, I saw this movie the first time before you put it out. You didn't put it out. You just sent me a raw copy and said, "What do you think?" I watched it. I was really intrigued. And then you did something else to it. You went back and you added basically acting to it.
Yeah.
And you put it out again. You sent it to me again. And you said, "What are you thinking?" I went, "Oh my God." It went from, "Yeah, that's a good, yeah, that's very interesting," to "Holy shit," right? And it moves fast. It didn't move as fast. It kind of moved fast because of the editing. But when you add it, kind of that drum beat to it and that boom, 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 that feeling that the same thing you did in Fat Documentary where you had the drum and it was, you had that Peter Pardini stink on it, man.
Yeah.
It just moves. So tell us about the movie. Tell us what it is in your own words.
Yeah, so it started what the evolution of it is during COVID I had edited a basically a feature length documentary out of archival footage that would show the United States history from Y2K all the way through the shutdowns because I thought that was an interesting bookend. It's like Y2K, everyone's preparing for a disaster that never happened. And then no one was preparing for, no matter how you see it, like no one was preparing for the world to shut down at the beginning of 2020. And then it happened. So I thought that was an interesting thing, showing uninterrupted clips just back to back to back with no commentary of basically found footage online. And I had shown that to you, and it just wasn't ever going to come out. I mean, that was never going to be released as a for sale, movie. And I started to think, well, maybe I could make a movie about a guy making that movie and then add a bunch of stuff to the character to make it, this kind of mysterious drama about a guy in 2024 who is still in lockdown for some reason. We don't know why he's still scared of the pandemic. And we learn more about this character throughout the movie. And all the while, he's putting together this kind of vaguely conspiratorial documentary about all of the insane things that have happened in the last 20 years of US history. Um, and I shot it all in Austin, and we did it for $40,000 in 8 days. And it was crazy. I mean, it was a thing where, this movie more than any other movie I've done, where before shooting, I had to do literally everything. I had to write it, produce it, get the props, do all the insurance. Like I had no help because it just was the only way to do it with that budget level. And now it's coming out, and this one's really important to me personally because there's a lot of personal stuff in there that does kind of match up to my life. None of the really crazy stuff, but they always joke that filmmakers make their high school movie where a 40-year-old will make a movie about an 18-year-old and it's just them getting out their high school stuff on film.
Right.
But this one's me doing that, but getting a lot of stuff that we've all gone through in the last 5 years, no matter where we stand in the political spectrum. We've shown this at film festivals, and people from both sides of the aisle come out of it thinking it's about them, and that's really the thing I'm most proud of. And I just implore everyone, please, like this movie means a lot to me. Please go watch it. It's called Man Goes On Rant, and it's pretty much available for streaming everywhere now.
Yeah, it's a rare thing when whenever I watch a lot of high school movies, right? I'll go back. Serena gets a big kick out of it. I watch everything. Pretty in Pink, 16 Candles,
Mhm.
Breakfast Club, right? All of these people are close to my age, right? And they're all coming of age movies. and there's the nerd, and there's the cool guy, and there's the athlete, and all the things. And I think the reason, and there's a movie called Class with the Brat Pack,
Rob Lowe.
Rob Lowe, and so all of those movies. And I just watched Vision Quest again the other night. I hate to admit that it's a guilty pleasure, but all of those movies, we find ourselves in those movies, right? It's like, oh yeah, I remember. I'm at 62. It's kind of like listening to the Chicago music we were talking about earlier.
Time travel.
Yeah, you can almost smell it, right? You can smell my old car, right? The dingy smell in that car and the whole thing, and you can smell the high school gym, right? When you can, Marcel Proust talked a lot about when you smell something or you can taste it, it can transport you back to a time, and movies do that too. And the first time I watched it when it was, not acted, right? And it's hard to explain what that means until you see the movie. You forget about everything that happened between Y2K and the pandemic, right? I mean, but, remember, folks, 9/11 happened in between those two times, right?
Yeah.
9/11 did not happen before Y2K, Y2K, and then 9/11. And I was the guy in the elevator at 11:59 at midnight on Y2K because I wanted to prove that I wasn't scared of a fucking elevator, right? But that, we laugh about it now,
Brave of you.
right? No, but I wanted to prove that this was not going to be a thing. There were
Yeah.
news stories on all of the news channels, right? On ABC, NBC, CBS, and whatever the cable channels were back then, MSNBC or whatever. And they're all going, at midnight, all the computers worldwide, the grid is going to shut down. We really think this is going to happen. They were scaring the crap out of people. And I just sat around and went, this is categorically false. This is
Yeah.
not going to happen. The whole world is not on some weird grid, right? And I got in an elevator. I was sitting there with my watch, waiting and waiting and waiting, got in an elevator and just kept riding up and down for 5 minutes. Never stopped. Got out, told the girl I had a date with, can we go have sex now? It's New Year's. Right?
Well, that was the plan. Look how brave I am on this
Yeah.
elevator.
Aren't I a hero now? I rode an elevator, baby. Come on, let's go see. And let's go take a look see. But I mean, I'm sure I didn't get laid that night. I'm just talking tough here. The bottom line is that I did it because I truly believed nothing was going to happen. But you see, I'm the guy that's been questioning authority from the time the nuns told me Jesus Christ walked on water. Right?
Yeah.
And I'm not anti-religion, but I did raise my hand and go, could it have been a sandbar? Could there have been something that he was could it have been a party trick?
Well, this
Right.
movie deals with someone who, it's not just about him making a documentary and being scared of COVID or whatever. It's about somebody who is that person where we learn more and more that maybe before all this happened, he was the guy who forever didn't think anything was ever going to happen. And now that something has happened to him that we learn throughout the movie, he now starts to question everything. And that's why he's starting to make the documentary, is so that he can learn. The log line I have online, or one of the log lines I have, is that it's about a man who's making a documentary about the last 20 years of human history in order to explain why his relationship failed. And it's hopefully when people watch it, they do have that experience where they're watching, it's not a guy sitting in a room editing a movie, but
Right.
it's basically, you're seeing this thing play out where, yeah, that is a weird coincidence where, in 2003, the Iraq War started at the same time that SARS was happening, and SARS didn't break out, but Iraq did. And then now COVID started in 2019, 2020. And it's like this conspiratorial minded person in the movie starts to wonder, well, was it all set up? Was it planned? Because they chose which one to go with. And it kind of delves into the conspiratorial mind in a way that I wanted to understand, because I think right now, a lot of what's going on in the culture in general is that there's both sides have wacky people who have conspiracies about different things, and everyone else in the middle is just like, can we just stop for a second and just chill out? And so I wanted to learn and understand why would somebody be scared of COVID in 2024? Why would somebody think certain things that I've seen on YouTube and watched on YouTube? Because I can't stay away from that stuff. Like, I'll go down
Right.
the rabbit hole and watch that stuff all night long because it's like I love seeing the way people's brains work, where they connect one thing to another, and it's like maybe it's just a coincidence. And the other times I'm like, yeah, that does make sense, doesn't it? So it's it's definitely a different and unique movie, compared to anything else that's out there right now. I would say.
You know, COVID, you mentioned SARS, right? And every couple of years we would have a bird flu and we
Yeah.
had SARS and we had this and that and the whole thing. And it was always pandemic, pandemic, pandemic. No one paid attention.
Hmm.
Literally, I never cared about any of the bird flus or any of the SARS or any of the stuff that came about because it never took hold. And we started hearing about this. They were calling it at the beginning the Wuhan flu, right?
Hmm.
Or the China virus.
Yeah.
Something's coming out of China. Or it's coming out of Wuhan, the Wuhan flu. Like they didn't have a name for it yet. They weren't calling it a pandemic yet. And we had family coming from England. So Serena's brother, Ben, was coming to stay with us. We had just moved to Virginia. We had only been here a few months. Ben was coming for a visit, for a 2-week visit. Kristen was going to be in New York with her then boyfriend, now husband, uh, John, who runs Bloomberg News. So I was going to meet John for the first time. They had been dating for a fair bit at that point. Time to start introducing John to family, right? And so Ben was with us in Charlottesville, and Kristen called and said they were supposed to come the next day from New York down here. She goes, "Hey, we're going back. Sorry, we have to go back." And we were like, "Is everything okay?" And she was like, "Yeah, we might not be able to get a flight out." It's like, "What?" "Oh, they're shutting down everything, right?" And this was like, she goes, "Within 2 or 3 days, everything's going to, airports, everything's going to be shut down." You got to remember, we're talking about the guy who runs Bloomberg News,
Yeah.
right? They have special information, right?
Yeah.
And I literally said to Serena, I said, "Just tell Kristen if they didn't want to come, they could have just said they don't want to come, right? We get it. You're busy."
Yeah.
But as it turns out, Ben ended up staying with us for 4 months, right? He got stuck in a happy way because I had a guy to play with every day.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
So we did all kinds of fun stuff, right? We were hiking, we were doing all kinds of stuff. But I say 4 months, I think it was 3 months.
Yeah.
But you know, all of a sudden this one matters, and they're telling us to leave. If Amazon drops something off, leave it outside for a week and then let the sun hit it because
I have to
this
admit, for the first week I did that, and I admit it fully. But at a certain point, I realized I think I'm going to be okay. I haven't been sick in years. I think I'll be fine now. I was worried about you. If you had a resurgence of your leukemia, then I think maybe that would have been something to be concerned
it
about.
could have taken me out. Yes, it could have. But
Yeah.
here's the
But
thing,
that's someone with cancer, not a healthy 34-year-old,
right?
or babies.
But Peter, you're better than me because I did the 15 days.
I did
Yeah,
too. No, I did that. I
I
got
did
back
the
from
two
Las
week.
Vegas and stayed inside for 15 days.
Yeah, but we did the wiping down of the packages. But towards the end of that, I was like, I was waning towards the end. Serena goes, "Did you wipe that down?" Yeah, I wiped it down. I didn't. I was
Yeah.
just playing along because your hands were getting raw from touching, you
Oh
know,
yeah.
wipes
I
all
had
day.
rashes all over my wrists from washing my hands too much, and I'm like, okay, I gotta just chill out here.
Yeah, and I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not going to do it. I just can't do it. I'm going to keep saying I'm doing it online because I don't want to become a pariah.
Yeah. Well, now it's okay.
Yeah, well, but every doctor I had coming on during that period wanted to talk about it. And
Yeah.
I would say to him, listen, I might sound like the biggest pussy in the world, but it's too much of a third rail thing. And I don't want to put out information that may or may not be wrong. Every single doctor wanted to come on and say, this is bullshit. They need to know it's bullshit. People need to know, they need to know. The number of, I'm talking guys with Harvard degrees, guys from South Africa, guys from Ireland, guys from England, guys that graduated from, Rhodes, all these different top level doctors who were being shut down. They were
Yeah.
all dying to come on to a podcast where they can say, because it was one of the few safe spaces where we weren't being, and it's like, you know what? Call me a fucking pussy here, man. But I'm not willing
You know,
to lose half
I
my audience.
I know I've told you about this movie, and I'm sure we've talked about it in this specific regard before, but you know, I understand why people think that there was, let's say, an effort to keep COVID going. Um, but there's another angle on it that I think is interesting and probable for most people who were, don't say that, you can't say that, is that in general, people don't like to admit that they were wrong. And I think that we went so far with the precautions that most people had to be right because they would have felt embarrassed had they had admitted that they just wasted 3 months of their life. So let's make it a year. And there's a movie called The Fog of War that I'm sure you watched right after we
Oh, yeah.
talked about it. The former, I think, Secretary of Defense, Robert McNamara. I think I'm getting that name right. But he essentially said that that's why it took them so long to get out of Vietnam and why they kept going with it. It was because they didn't want to admit they were wrong. It's
Right.
not because they were evil. It's not because they liked watching 50,000 people die, 50,000 American soldiers. It's because they literally were just like embarrassed.
Yeah.
And I think there probably are some evil people who wanted COVID to keep going. I mean, I'm sure of it, but I think most people were probably like, "Come on, don't say that. Like, we're gonna get in trouble, or I'm wrong, or I agree, but don't say that." Because I've had a lot of people now who it's like out in the open. They're like, "Oh yeah, came from here. It was this. I didn't really follow the rules." But I know those same people in May of 2020 were like, "Oh no, we can't get together. It's not safe." So I don't know what the answer is. I think that's like, again, like in this movie, like what I'm trying to get across is like people are very complicated, and you can see someone. The One of the other main goals with it was to show someone before and after a life changing incident happens, whether it's COVID or something else, and you
Yeah.
see someone can completely change who they are before and after major things happen, and trying to understand that rather than just saying, oh well, I voted for this person, they're bad, or I voted for this person, they're bad. um, because viruses aren't political. And we've turned everything into politics now.
Well, I
So
think we've turned this into politics too. And I will explain right after I tell you guys about Villa Capelli olive oil. Villa Capelli is the longest running sponsor on this show. You hear me talk about it every time, folks. I'm not going to belabor the point this time because I need to get back to Peter. But Villa Capelli is 100% pure olive oil. It's not cut. That's right. In this country, you could cut it up to 40% with seed oils and then add perfumes and colors and everything else to make it taste, or not taste, but look and smell like olive oil. You're never going to get the taste back. You want the real stuff? Get Villa Capelli. You could go straight to villacapelli.com or you could go to vinnietortorich.com and click through the banner. Either way, you'll get to Villa Capelli. When you get to checkout, put in promo code Vinnie, Vinnie, and you'll save 10% every single time. We're talking to the guy who did really famous movies like Fat, a documentary, one of the top documentaries that Gravitas, one of the top things Gravitas has ever done, right? When the Gallaghers were there. So he did that movie. He did Chicago Now More Than Ever. He's done a bunch of movies. Serena was in one of his movies. What was the name of that movie Serena was in
Rolling
with
Thunder.
Rolling Thunder? And now Man Goes on a Rant. Where can people find it, Peter?
People can find Man Goes On Rant at iTunes, Amazon. I'm sure YouTube has it too to buy. It's probably going to be a lot like our other movies where it streams for a few months and then goes to some of the free streaming platforms. But, like I said, this movie was made for only $40,000, and I see it as like much easier to ask people to buy something for $13 than to donate money to an Indiegogo or something, which we had to do. So it would mean a lot to me if people went and gave this a chance and watched it and um, supported the movie, because it took a very small amount of people to make it, and we all put our heart and soul into it, and it just really is part of me. So I would be so thrilled if people went and checked it out.
The amazing thing, Peter, is that it doesn't look, you keep mentioning the $40,000. It doesn't look like a movie that was made for $40,000. And I don't think people can understand the amount of work you did for free, because you did all the editing on it, right? And if you had to go pay for that kind of editing in Hollywood, that would cost by itself hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Probably. Yeah, I mean, and the truth of it is that almost everybody was working for, if not nothing, versus their value, 90% less than what they normally get. And people did it because they related to the story. And, I am fortunate that I'm able to edit and do sound design and all that, but basically everything outside of shooting and getting the sound mix and the color correction is coming directly from me. I did the score for it. I scored the movie, and our boys Chicago, some of the guys in it did some of the instrumentation on it. So they were playing. So a few of the tracks, the horn section and the drummers played on. And I just feel very fortunate that I've was able to make a movie for that little, that was probably would have cost $500,000 if people were working for what they deserved. So
Right. Yeah, that's the impression I want to make. This is not a $40,000.
I shot it on my iPhone. So
Yeah, this is. Remember when was it Spike Lee who used credit cards to make his first movie, and it became like a famous movie? And he made the movie for $35,000, and it became a famous movie. Might have
Yep.
even won awards, I think.
I can't remember which one it was his first. Was it She's Gotta Have It? I'm not sure. Because I know
Mm,
Do the Right Thing was the huge one, but he
I think it was.
had
I think it was Do the Right Thing, where he literally put it on his credit cards. He got a bunch of credit cards back in the '80s, and
crazy.
yeah. So
But yeah, I mean, this is a professionally done movie just with a lot of favors. Um, but it did come from all of our hearts, because the movie deals with, the hot button issue of now. You can't talk about almost anything now without feeling like somebody might be offended by it. And it was a big leap for me to be able to put, I guess, middle of the road opinions out there in a way that felt edgy, because they're
right.
things we all agree with. I mean, I'm firmly stand by most of the stuff in the movie is something that almost anybody from any side of the aisle or religion or background is going to find something in themselves that they relate to. And that's really, I think, what movies should do, even if they're, deal with topics that are hard to talk about. It shouldn't be exclusive. It should be, I hate the word inclusion and all that stuff, but like movies should be inclusive in a way that they're entertaining and people see themselves in it, and not being like preached to at the same time. Like, you want people to find things for themselves and not tell them how to feel.
Yeah, and when I watched the movie, the movie made me feel some angst, but in a way that you want to feel it, because you're feeling this guy's pain. And I'm always talking about it on this show. I worry about young kids today. You hear all these things like, you hear about incels, right?
Mhm.
Involuntary celibate. Then you hear, oh, kids aren't having sex anymore, and sperm counts are down, and then school shootings are way up, right? And just tragedy the other day, where one kid walks out of track meet, walks under the other kid's tent, and we don't know what happened there, but the kid got stabbed. Right now, they're trying to turn it into a political thing because the kid who did the stabbing was black and the other kid was white, and I don't understand what all that is. Right? I'm like, you go back. It's like, God, when we did track meets, we would go hang out with the kids from the other schools, just because it's like, hey, there's some other kids over there.
Yeah.
Right. And there's a couple of hot chicks that don't look like the hot chicks in our school. So let's go over there. And they would come over to ours. And so I don't
When you
get
have this thing your
why.
whole life and
Yeah.
all you're getting is information, inevitably, it doesn't take that many people to just say, oh, that person's different. I hate that person. And that is across everything. I mean, it's, yeah, I agree. I agree with you.
Yeah. And it really shouldn't be that way. And of course, I could sit here in my White Castle and go, oh, it shouldn't be that way. But I worry. I have nieces and nephews, and now one of my nephews has a kid, so it looks like this family is going to go on for a while, and I wonder about the world we're leaving them, right? Because all they know is cell phones from the time they're born, right?
Well, we're
And
trying to do that with our daughter, is to like limit, because it does get tough at some points where you're just like, I want her to just sit there and watch something. And we have our things that we show her. It's like once or twice a day for maybe an hour. Um, but we're going to be very cautious about that, as cautious as we can be, so that she's not
yeah,
just, who knows what she's going to see if she has a cell phone. Like, we got to get one of those burner phones that's just calls, and texts.
I
But
know you think that now, but you watch what happens when they end up in school, right?
and
Daddy, I
then
need
we,
that, you
yeah,
know, and and it's not easy. I mean, I went on a cell phone diet about a month ago, and because I was creeping up, right? The
yeah, yeah,
national average is 7 hours, and I was at 3 hours, where the year before I was at 2 hours, and the year before that I was at an hour and a half. So I was creeping up to the high 2 to 3 hour mark, and I went, okay, I'm obviously not just using this phone to do social media anymore. I'm spending life on this phone.
yeah,
And if you do the math, if you spend the average, which is 7 hours a day, and then you sleep for another 8 hours and you work for 8 hours, you're not doing anything else. You've used up all of your 24 hours. You're done. Right. And I couldn't imagine a life of even doing 3 hours of that. So the first week I cut it, my average went down to 107.
that's great.
And then I realized that, wait a minute, I was still monkeying around on the phone when I wasn't working. The next week, I went down to like 45 or 47. And then I wanted to see what it was like to go hardcore. I went hardcore and I got it down to 22 minutes average per day for a whole week.
Wow.
And then I went, okay, I'm not getting my work done now. I'm not returning text and stuff like that, because
Yeah.
now it's become a weird game for me. So the average for me has been between 30 and 35. It's always under 40 minutes, right?
I mean, I think
Just
that's probably all it takes, you know?
and by the way, I use an app when I'm on my rowing machine twice a week, and I'm on the rowing machine sometimes for 30, 45 minutes or an hour. So that's part of that average when that comes in.
Wow.
So, yeah. So it just goes to show you how much time we waste. And people go, oh, yeah, I use it. We're never so brilliant, Peter, is when we're justifying our own bad behavior. Oh, yeah, no, I use it to relax. I play games and relax. You know what? We used to have hookers for that.
I'm a
I'm not,
news junkie. I have to admit, I do look at X a lot, and it's not all bad. I do like, part of my OCD is I do like to know things, and that also has its major downsides, though, as you know too much and then you're not happy because you know things that you shouldn't know. It's like, I don't need to know, as horrible as some things are that happen around the world. I don't need to know that. Like, I don't. And it doesn't make me a bad person for not needing to know it, you know? It's I can't remember who told me. It was Jason Chef, who was in Chicago before. He told me, he said, try putting your phone away for a couple days, and then you'll realize you're missing nothing. And then if something happens that you need to know about, you'll find out without the phone. Like, after 9/11, you didn't need, there were no cell phones really, but
Right.
after 9/11, you were going to hear about that. You didn't need X to go and watch the 40th angle of the plane going into the building. That's the part that's bad, is hearing the bad event and then going and watching the footage of it happening over and over and over and over again. It's like they've maybe figured out a way to do what they do to soldiers when they go into basic training and brainwash us by showing us the worst things over and over all day.
Right.
Oh,
Well,
and here's
look,
a kitten. Everything's fine.
Corolla and I had this conversation one night. We were with a larger group of people, but the whole table ended up getting into the conversation. It was like 5 guys out for a steak. And we got into this, and we were all about the same age. It was Adam's birthday. It was like his 54th birthday or something. It was just me and him and, just a couple other guys. And we got into this conversation about when we were kids. And ever since that thing, whenever I hear his show, he brings it up on the show. He still brings it up because I said at one point, I said, guys, I said, I was living in a swamp of Louisiana. Okay. Adam, where were you? I was in the valley. Mike August, where was you? I was here and there and everywhere else. We were all somewhere, right?
Yeah.
Around the country. I said, okay. Did any of you hear the story when you were about 12 or 13 about the girl who this guy slipped her some Spanish fly? There was this mythical thing. It was almost like a unicorn. It's called Spanish fly. And if you were able to slip it to a girl, they would become so horny they would have to have sex with you right now. Right?
Cosby style.
It was, well, no, that's like knocking the girl out. And this was like they just become ravenous for her. And the story I started telling was this girl has some Spanish fly, and she got in her car and started driving home, and she couldn't wait to get home. So she pulled over and started having, not to sound gross, sex with the stick shift on the cars, back when cars had stick shifts.
Yeah.
And, she was so horny, she ended up rupturing herself and killing herself, and they found her on the stick shift. Every guy at that table knew exactly that story. Right. Yeah. And then Adam goes, all right, because I brought that one up. Right. And every guy knew it. Adam goes, who was the guy with the semen in his stomach? Rod Stewart.
Yeah. Richard Gere with the gerbil.
Richard Gere with the gerbil. Okay.
Our generation's was Marilyn Manson removing ribs in order to service himself. That somehow went around the country with no cell phones.
Right. Zero cell phone. And everyone, how can a kid on a bayou in Louisiana and a kid, one guy was from Vermont, the other, Adam, is from the Valley. How do we know exactly the same story at the same time?
Makes me believe it's supernatural something. It's pretty crazy.
It's just work, because everyone had a telephone, a landline, and people would tell these stories, and the stories would carry on, and the whole thing. Those stories were never on the news, but we all knew them. And I was the one, I debunked it that night. I said, think about it. For Rod Stewart to have a gallon of semen in his stomach, I said, I did the math. There would have to be like, I can't remember, it's like 400 or 700 guys, and it would take this number of hours to do it. It's constantly emptying its content.
Yeah.
Right. So
emptying the content.
Yeah. Like your stomach empties all of its content every 3 hours. And it takes, to get through that number of guys, it takes like 15 hours. So
you're like that Beautiful Mind meme where you're standing there and all the numbers are coming up around your head.
And they're like sitting around going, every one of those guys, one of the guys is the guy, I can't think of his name right now. You might know his name. He's the guy that does the Fast and Furious movies.
Vin Diesel?
No. He's the guy that produces them or directs them.
Yeah, Chris something.
Yeah. Chris was there. And I'm saying, guys, they're emptying the content. And there's no way. And he thought about it for a second. This is a very smart guy. This guy's like made a gazillion bucks. And he's a billionaire in Hollywood, right? He goes, I always wondered if there could be any truth into that story. And you just blew that out of the water. I said, well, blow is a strong word to use here. But you see, those are the things we believe, right? We start to believe things. If you start to believe things and you have a phone that doesn't let you stop believing those things,
Yeah.
you eventually pick up a gun and go to a nursery school, right?
Yeah.
You think the world's going to end because you
Mhm.
don't have anything to block you from that, right? Or you think a Wuhan virus, after like the first 2 weeks, you couldn't even call it that anymore. That became political.
COVID-19. It's still called that, by the way. Shouldn't it be COVID-25 at this point?
COVID-19. Yeah. Well, they found it in 2019. But, you mentioned my cancer. Gina Grad, the girl who used to do this show, her dad got exactly the same form of cancer I got during COVID.
Hmm.
Very healthy man, had to die alone in a hospital. His daughter, when she knew that they would be taking him from one hospital to a place to get an infusion and back, they would stop the ambulance drivers would stop in the parking lot and just open the back doors and look the other way so that Gina can go and hold her dad's hand and tell him she loved him. That's what was going on in this country just a few years ago.
I know.
And
I know.
she would have to go to the window
Terrible.
and stand on a cinder block to look and peer in and see her dad.
Yeah.
Can you imagine? He died alone.
No, I can't imagine, and I mean, that's awful. The movie does deal with that in a way, with slight spoiler for the movie, but this is why, like, I feel like we all need to talk about this stuff because it's okay that it happened. Like, people freaked out and we made bad choices, but like, let's not do it again, because people shouldn't be having funerals on Zoom. They shouldn't be, if they want to make the choice to go and be with their loved one when they're dying in a hospital, they should be able to do it and not let strangers be taking care of it. So I agree completely. That's terrible. I'm sorry for Gina.
Yeah, there was a lot of hand holding because she knew I went through the same. She was asking me about, how did this go down? How did that go down? But he got an infection and he couldn't fight it. That's the problem with the cancer I get. The infection would kill you before the cancer.
Yeah.
Um, Folks, the movie is called Man Goes on a Rant. You could get it right now. Go get it, go watch it. But more than that, wherever you watch it, rate it and review it. Doesn't cost you a dime to do that.
And just to
Rate
say,
it.
it's Man Goes On Rant. You're not the first person to do this. It's Man Goes On Rant, like a newspaper headline. So
Yeah.
there's no there. So just, yeah, make sure that's. I appreciate it. Sorry, keep going.
Man Goes on a Rant. Did I say a rant? Did I
Yeah,
say that?
no, everyone does that. So I titled it incorrectly, but
Yeah. Yeah, but no, that's the way headlines used to be. Man Goes on a Rant. Go check it out right now. Go do it. Do it for Peter. And maybe if you do it, maybe I can talk Peter into coming back in on my next documentary. And
I think that would be great. I've thought a lot about that. I think we should.
yeah, look, a lot has happened since the first movie. I think we would have to somehow come up with money, a lot of
Yeah.
money because the funds are waning from movie to movie, and I think we could do another big documentary. And I wouldn't do. I, I've talked to Peter about, and we've talked about something we like right now, but don't even start asking me, folks. It ain't going to happen for a while. But if it happens, it'll be big. We'll figure it out.
It's going to be bigger than fat in terms of production value.
Oh yeah, yeah. 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 But we would have to get a lot of money, Peter. We would,
I agree.
you know,
You got to do it up. You got to do it right.
yeah. The only way to do this next one is to get close to $1 million. But I think maybe we can do that. You know,
Awesome.
we'll
I'm
ask
in.
around. He's in. Hey, folks, I got Peter is on.
Wait, no, buy
He's
my movie first. No.
buy Peter's movie so that we can go get Man Goes on Rant. Let Peter let him get a taste, and then we can pull it in. That's the way it works.
Thank you.
Hang on, Peter. You got to wait until this thing does something. I don't know how it works. You know what to do, folks. We all go shopping on Amazon. Before you go to Amazon, go to VinnieTortorich.com. As a matter of fact, when you go to Amazon, go get Man Goes On Rant and watch it right there. It's probably the cheapest you're going to see it anywhere. Amazon always has the best price. So go there. Rate and review this podcast. More so, rate and review Peter Pardini's movie. I would be remiss if I didn't finish on this song. So here we go. On behalf of Peter Pardini, my name is Vinnie Tortorich. Put life into living and do it with this little song.